Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two, and figuring out just what is going on is always a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we're reading Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, up to but not including Chapter 12, in which Sophie becomes Howl's old mother.
And before anything, obviously we mentioned this in the previous episode, but if anybody is just reading or listening to this on its own, which is completely fine, we should preface it and say that I have read this book before and watched the movie, so it doesn't really make sense with the whole, like, it's a toss-up what's gonna happen, because I know what's gonna happen, but it's an experiment of an episode.
It's a Schrodinger's toss-up, you know, both is and isn't known, so...
Yeah.
Like, so I have not read it, I have not seen it, I know pretty much nothing except what I just read, so...
Yeah, which is interesting. For me, writing these notes, trying not to give things away. But yeah, it should still be an okay episode, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your second episode thoughts when we get there, but I'm excited to do some sort of blind testing right now.
Yeah.
what we can and can't talk about.
Yeah, and it's also gonna put all of the pressure on you, John, to come up with the theories.
Yes, I know the theories.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my best.
And I can't even, like, pretend to go along with you because, truthfully, what I remember... Like, I remember the big things, but some of the smaller things, I genuinely cannot tell if I know them from the movie or from the book or if I'm making them up. So I'm kind of in, like, a dangerous...
You said there's some significant differences too, right?
Yeah, they're pretty different.
Yeah, I'll have to do a watch after we're done reading the book
for
too.
For sure. Even just, like, the film aesthetically is beautiful.
I believe it. Well, I've seen many images of it. Like, I still think of the the castle when I think of the castle while reading this book because I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, Howl's Moving Castle is definitely, like, one of the most, like, forefront Ghibli films, probably, in regards to, like, that aesthetic and everything. Everybody knows the castle.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, actually, that my partner has some wall art of it in the basement or something that's never, like, made it up onto a wall, but it's here.
Maybe that'll change.
Yeah.
But to get into the book itself, the setting itself is just pretty, like, vaguely fantasy. I say that because we have, like, some fantasy tropes. Like, obviously we have magic, but we have kind of, like, some folklore, like, belief going on as well. Like, Sophie is the eldest of three, and so that means she will fail in making or going after, like, her fortune, her fate.
I was confused if this was supposed to be, like, an implied, like, cultural thing outside of the book, or if this is, like, within the world of the book, like, being the eldest daughter is just shitty.
I think it's just in the book, like, in the universe, but I think it's drawing on, like, kind of like the Grimm fairy tale type of idea. Like, you usually have three siblings. We saw a little bit of this in the Starless Sea, actually, with the three swords, the three siblings.
Right.
So I think it's just following that kind of trend we see in fairy tale within our universe.
Yeah, I was like, the other thing I was thinking too is this is a British book, right? So I was like, what don't, like, I feel like a lot of times, you know, American culture and British culture are intertwined, but for something like this, I was like, maybe there's just something I'm missing here, you know?
Yeah, that's fair, for sure. Sophie herself seems to be pretty, like, resigned to that fate, I guess. I think that's definitely enforced by her stepmother, Fanny. Again, she has, like, a stepmother, and, like, she's technically a step sibling, like, again, the fairy tale thing.
Too.
Yeah.
Didn't even make these observations. Great point.
Yeah, and but Letty and Sophie are obviously, they get along great with Martha, who's their half sister. And Sophie describes, like, she's kind of the one that takes care of them mostly. Like, she did take care of them mostly, so they're all pretty close. But they end up having to separate when Sophie's just hers. No, when all of their father dies. Because apparently there's not enough money for Fanny to just take care of all of them or have them go to school.
No, apparently that seems questionable if that's really the reason.
Yeah. So Fanny sets them up according to this kind of belief in this fate, this prophecy type of nonsense. So Martha, being the youngest, has the best option. She goes to apprentice for a witch. And then Letty has, like, the second best option, which is apprenticing with this bakery in the town they live in, which is still, like, good for her, and she'll be able to meet people and like hopefully get married, have children, classic.
Right.
And Sophie has the worst of it. She apprentices under Fanny, working in the hat shop that belongs to their family. But as you noted, like the money situation, Sophie is pretty good at making hats, it seems. And so Letty, who is actually Martha, will explain, tells her that like Fanny hasn't been spending all day in the shops like buying silk for the store. She's been using the money that Sophie is bringing in to do whatever she wants. So she's not the greatest person.
And yeah, not cutting her a piece of it.
Right. Yeah. No wage for Sophie to be seen.
Yeah, I do like how like down the sisters are too. Like they're like, no, you need to defend yourself. Like stop working for free. Like say something. I like the vibe. I like the sisterhood.
Yeah, and this is kind of the start, I think, of maybe a little bit of the theme of this book of like, you kind of just have to tell yourself what you deserve and then get it, right? Like Letty and Martha know what they want in their life, and so they swap places. But Sophie is still kind of listening to destiny, like whatever belief they have in this sort of destiny, rather than chasing it and finding out for herself. And so she's like too accepting of a bad circumstance because she's not willing to try to make her life better.
Right.
And it's not a bad life, to be fair, but like it's not, she could be more, obviously.
Yeah, I think many people just kind of coast and follow what's expected and live perfectly fine, enjoyable lives. But I do think I see that poking through as like a main thing of she's going to have to find her own way, and like what's about to happen to her is going to, in a way, give her the opportunity to do so.
Right. And that force into action is basically when she ends up meeting the Witch of the Waste, who is kind of like this infamous character. And I guess some important backstory. The Witch of the Waste threatened the king's daughter. The king's Wizard Solomon, went after the witch, apparently died. The prince, Justin, had an argument with the king and is apparently exiled and missing. That's all happening in the background,
Lots
by
of
the
drama.
way. Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like Sophie has any involvement in anything, but like it gets weird when the Witch of the Waste shows up and like speaks of Sophie meddling with something that's hers, or like facing off against the Witch of the Waste somehow. And we still don't have an explanation as to why that is.
Yeah. I put less brain cells into this as opposed to some other things, but the thought I was having here was if maybe there's like a weird timeline thing happening where like whatever Sophie's about to do is going to cause problems for the Witch of the Waste, and that's why she's behaving that way. But then also that it would be kind of self-fulfilling prophecy if the Witch of the Waste turns her into an older woman and then enables her to do all of the things that the Witch of the Waste will then be upset about in this theory. So I don't know if that makes the most sense, but that's the timeline thing is what I thought of first.
I will say it could be possible if the Witch of the Waste doesn't like understand she's the catalyst for getting Sophie involved.
True.
Like if her knowledge is limited, it could definitely be something like that.
That's a good point. Like we don't know what she knows like that has gotten her mad at Sophie, right? She could have been told things, she could have experienced things secondhand, and just knows that Sophie is to blame. Yeah,
because to be fair, so far we haven't seen the Witch of the Waste again.
True. It seems like likely though, right? We have this background story of like the king and Howl getting involved. Like I assume that's going to be the path to the Witch of the Waste for them.
Yeah, and I mean, we did leave off on a chapter where Sophie's about to go talk to the king.
Yeah.
And we know Hal has been hired against his will, kind of, by the king to find the prince and possibly stop the witch if he can.
Well, he also decided to throw out there that he thinks the wizard's still alive, too.
Yeah, which, definitely didn't help. But yeah, now he has to do all these things he doesn't want to get involved in, so... we can talk about why he might not want to be involved later, I suppose.
Okay, let me bring one more thing up about that. Sorry, like about the run-in with the witch, because there was someone else with her, right?
Yeah, she had not like a guardsman, like a just like an assistant. I don't know.
Right. Like he almost seemed to be like trying to tell Sophie to like stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I thought was interesting because I almost forgot about the fact that she said those things about Sophie, because Sophie is like pissed already in this scene, right? Like she kind of instigates with the witch,
Mm-hmm.
and is mean to her from a customer service perspective, to say the least. And so it could be seen as like that being an initial reason why Sophie, or why the witch does what she does. But then there's all these other comments too. So I just think the inclusion of that extra character in this kind of like setting the scene of like Sophie being disgruntled before this all happens is interesting. I guess it's maybe more to set up Sophie's story than it is to set up conflict with the witch, and like what sort of development she's going to go through. But I just wanted to highlight it. I don't know if there's going to be importance in there being this kind of guardsman side character. At first, when I read it, I was like, is this going to be Howl? Like, is it, because I know that at this point that Howl is a wizard, you know, and that there's this Witch of the Waste is like a main character too, in a way, even if she's not an active main character. So I thought maybe it was going to be Hal, but later on it seems like, oh no, like they don't vibe.
That is an important point. Yeah, I definitely could see it being more so for Sophie's character, because this is the first kind of like true showing of who I think she actually is, which is kind of like an asshole a little bit, like in a slash pause way.
Yeah.
She's a lot more open to doing it once the Witch of the Waste turns her into an old woman, because she thinks she's old, she can just say whatever she wants and it'll be fine. But that's when like her true self, I guess, starts to come through a little bit.
Right.
And with her now being old, obviously she can't just stay an apprentice, especially because she can't speak about the spell. So her only option really is to leave.
Which I think she's happy to do at this point, too.
Yeah, she's not exactly happy with like the no wage, getting exploited type of thing.
Like the way she like welcomes the age immediately, she's like, oh, this is actually maybe not a bad thing. Like, let me take it in stride. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go, when I read the description of the book, I thought it was going to go in the direction of Sophie's like super upset that she's been turned into an older woman and her life is going to potentially be cut short, which like briefly comes up, but is like mostly not her problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does seem like she almost believes that she fits well into that body. Like,
right.
that it's her true self to be that old and a little disgruntled.
Mm-hmm.
So she ends up at Howl's Moving Castle. I don't think she was planning to go there, but it was like night and she just kind of needed somewhere to stay. And she gets let in. It is a bit important to note that, like, Calcifer, who's controlling the castle and thus the door, doesn't have to let her in.
True.
But he does.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about that, because he does mention, and you see him have control over it, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she gets like really bold in this part of the book too, of like, I'm gonna deceive them and like just gonna like basically find a reason to crash on their couch for the night and then dip in the morning before anyone notices.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of comical about it.
Yeah, Sophie, I think if I was reading this for the first time, I would be more annoyed at Sophie, because she does think she's like pulling the wool over their eyes almost, and she makes all these plans, but like nothing actually comes out of them. Like, her making the deal with Calcifer to break his contract if he breaks her spell, like, she doesn't actually do anything to like figure out what's going on.
I know. She doesn't. Well, she does some snooping, I guess, right? But it almost seems more self-centered, like, I'm going to try to solve my own problem kind of snooping, as opposed to let me snoop and figure out what's up with Calcifer.
Yeah. And there's even a point where she's like, okay, I'm just going to leave because I'm done with this. And I'm like, oh.
No, once they ask her to do one thing that they actually want her to do, she's like, I'm going to leave now. I will say I did get annoyed with her, like, in the cleaning section of just her, like, doing everything, like cleaning everything when she's not been asked to touch all of that stuff, and being like, I need to do this, and like, you guys need to listen to me, when literally every resident of that house is saying no. Like, I'm like, just don't, like, stop. They haven't kicked you out yet. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that is when we start to like develop the dynamic of the house, I guess. Because obviously Calcifer and Michael are at first afraid, but they seem to like become quite close to Sophie.
Yeah.
I think especially, I mean, Calcifer obviously has the deal with her, But Michael especially, I think him and Sophie get along very well.
It's funny you'd say that because I would emphasize the relationship with Calcifer more
Yeah,
than
fair.
the one with Michael, just because like the whole like, oh, she can like use his flame to cook. I mean, not without a little bit of struggle, but like the fact that he's done that for no one other than Hal, and I don't know, just the sort of, there's a lot of things that I think come up throughout where it's like, okay, like there's a Calcifer connection happening, or like I guess it was also connected to the cooking, but Hal just, oh no, this is what it was. Calcifer is like, oh, I think part of why Hal is okay with you staying here is because you treat me a certain way. And like because you were able to cook on me, and like he sees something here that he's not used to seeing.
Yeah, because to be clear, Calcifer is like a fire demon, right? Like,
yeah,
something you wouldn't really want to make a deal with, but Sophie does it anyway, and something most people would probably be frightened of. But
right, exactly.
Michael was kind to Calcifer, and now Sophie is like, maybe not kind, that might not be the right word, but like gets along with him in a normal way.
Exactly. She just kind of treats him like she would treat anyone else. She has confidence with him, the same that she's been displaying.
Right, yeah. To go back for a second though, I do think it's important we talk more about the contract. It's kind of like the main part of the book, right? Like,
right.
And I guess Sophie's enchantment. They're both more complicated than you might assume. I mean, Calcifer obviously can't talk about his contract with Hal. And Calcifer notes Sophie's enchantment has layers to it. So there's also something odd about it.
Yeah, does the Witch of the Waste kind of give her any... I forget if she gives her any rules, details about the spell?
I mean, the only thing she can't do is talk about it.
Right.
So that could be like being old and being unable to speak on it could be the layers we're looking at here.
I get the sense that Calcifer knows exactly what's up. Like, especially if he's making comments like that. Like, oh, like there's layers to yours. Like, I don't really know what is in his purview as a fire demon, but I just, with those comments, I'm like, okay, maybe he knows immediately that she isn't supposed to be this old, and like that is what has been cast on her specifically.
Yeah, I could believe that. And of course he can't really do anything about it until she upholds her end of the deal. Which, as we noted, she really isn't doing too much.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about Calcifer that I think is interesting, he mentions that he and Hal made the castle together. He also like casually was like, oh, I'm like 1,000,000 years older than you, so I'm a little bit confused about like, I don't know, like it's not like giving Calcifer and Hal were childhood friends per se, you know. So I'm kind of confused about like how Hal came across Calcifer, but it does seem like I described it as a love-hate, but I don't even know if that's like the right description. It does seem like Calcifer and Hal are friends and like have kind of a deep history together, but then they have this like, because there's this contract between them, there's kind of maybe disdain or I don't know, just complication to it. It doesn't seem like they're really enemies or like on the opposite end of something just because there's this sort of dissatisfying contract between them.
Yeah, and Calcifer does note that at this point the contract isn't doing either of them any good. Like, it's not good for them to be in whatever this contract is.
Yeah.
So that's probably, like, that might be what's, like, pushing kind of this tension between them. Because they know they have to break it, but maybe they can't themselves.
Yeah, maybe so. Which I guess maybe be another reason to even bring someone else in. Though then the question is kind of like, why Sophie as opposed to anyone else?
Yeah, why Sophie? So yeah, we're kind of at a standstill, I think, in regard to the contract for a while. We leave off with like the biggest hint where we are right now, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So things kind of become routine, obviously. Sophie is doing her cleaning thing, and she's kind of learning how everybody here operates and kind of also fitting in regards to, she even ends up giving out some like magic, which is what Hal does, because he has multiple I don't want to call them businesses. He has
Yeah.
multiple wizard locations, I guess. Because there's like this door that can change destination depending on how a dial is turned, right? So for the red, they're called like, it just said red blob. It's just
I know.
called a blob. That's like the Kingsbury door, which is where the king is. That's where we see a lot of the exchange between Hal being kind of hired by the king and like all the issues of that. And then green is the castle door that Sophie came in through. Blue is Port Haven, which is like the seaside town, which he deals some magic in. And it's also where the house is originally from, because it's a castle exterior, but it's just like a cottage on the inside. So that's like the original place of the house, it seems. And then the black blob is, who can say, we'll get there at the end. It looks like nothing at first, just complete void. So
yeah, which I think is a fun feature. I do think it's interesting that this house is from this Port Haven town, given that there's kind of implied, I don't even know how to talk about this, like an otherworld situation happening with these locations, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it's implied that he's from where his family is from, but he's got a house in Port Haven. So it's just like, there's some connections that haven't been made yet here, like to how he ends up in all this situation.
Yeah, and then he also apprenticed with somebody, I think that lives in Kingsbury.
I remember them being mentioned, yeah.
It's like, her name is kind of like Persimmon, but not like Persimmon, and I cannot remember what it is.
Yeah, I didn't write it down.
Yeah, but yeah, so obviously he has ties to like all of these places. But yeah, timeline-wise, the Port Haven thing is strange.
Yeah.
If he's from the Black Door.
Mm-hmm.
But also the timeline in general, I think, is just strange. Because, like, he's in his 20s, but, like, in the Black Door, he's gone to college and, like, got a nothing degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, when did he have time to apprentice with, like, the best wizard or witch?
Yeah. This is what's making me really curious about timeline with the Witch of the Waste, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and timeline in general. And we're playing with age in this story, so who knows, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, and then also, obviously, we have the whole history between Hal and the witch. You mentioned, wait, did you just say that? Am I crazy?
Not history so much. I did mention her, but I didn't mention the history between them, yeah.
Okay, because obviously they have something going on, right?
Yeah.
So,
right, because there's some beef, right?
Apparently.
Yeah, and we don't know when, why, whatever for that.
Yeah, so a lot more time than we think, I guess.
Probably a lot more time. Like, I wonder if the whole, like, 10,000 days isn't really from birth, per se. Like, for example, if we're thinking age.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember.
Good, for the better.
Also weird to the timeline is, like, we learn something about Hal, but it seems like it's a long-standing issue, which is him going out to, like, pursue a girl. I'm assuming this is kind of tied to the beef of him and the Witch in the Waste, but, like,
right.
He's doing this enough that Calcifer and Michael are, like, fed up with him, and, like, Calcifer keeps calling him, like, heartless, and Sophie is like, okay, yeah, I guess everything about him stealing the hearts of girls, maybe not literally, but, like, he still does it and is, like, an asshole.
No, he's known for it in the town she's from. I wrote Kingsbury, but that's not the right one.
Yeah, it's market
chipping. Like, market chipping, yeah. That's, like, the reputation he has, is, like, going around and, like, breaking young girls' hearts, I guess. They say, like, something crazy in the first situation, like sucking the souls out of them, which I was like, that's so crazy. Like, why would you describe it that way? Because then I thought they were dying or disappearing, but I don't think that's the case. I think they were all just heartbroken.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael had a hand in that so that he could blacken Hal's reputation, which he wants to do a lot. But it does, like, make you question, like, how long has he been doing this that he has a reputation about it, right? Like,
well, especially if we're talking about the age thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's been going on for a while. And I do think it's got to be connected to the witch stuff. I mean, to me, like, I think the source of this is the witch stuff, but it maybe predates it a little bit. If I'm thinking back to the whole, like, Calcifer and Hal made the castle together, it brings up the question of why make the castle, right? Like, why have a castle that moves about the land like this. And like maybe even in the pre-witch days he was kind of this like womanizing type, and like decided to make the castle so he could go around and meet women, you know. Like maybe that's where it started. But I'm skeptical that like this pursuit of women thing is super consciously by choice. I think it has something to do with what the witch has done to him.
Right. Because to skip ahead, like we know at the end of where we read that the Witch of the Waste has caught them. Like the curse she put on Howl has like caught up to him finally. So they seem to have been outrunning something.
Yeah, that's a good point too, right? Like if they were physically moving the castle to specifically run away from the witch. Yeah.
So then the question is, I guess we'll talk about it, but like the question is like, what are they outrunning, or what are they trying to protect within the castle?
Good point.
Sophie at this moment is a bit more prioritized with like, I guess, protecting her family, oddly enough, because Howl is pursuing somebody right now, and it happens to be Letty, which is awkward because Michael is apparently pursuing a girl that is called Letty. You know, Sophie's other sister.
Yes, there's Letty, and there's Martha Letty.
Yeah. Thankfully, Michael is involved in Martha Letty.
Yes.
And Martha seems to reciprocate those feelings, so that's great because Michael is like literally perfect in every way. Yeah.
No, it's so funny that he's kind of like cordial with Howl in the early thoughts of thinking that Howl is going after his woman. Like he's like, oh, like I sure hope he's not doing that because there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. I'm like, bro, you respect him so much, but why? Like if this is a concern you have.
Yeah. Yeah, so thankfully that's not a concern for Michael because Howl is pursuing actual Letty, who ended up going with Fairfax, the witch that their mother knew. And it doesn't seem like Letty's interested. We hear that Letty was involved with somebody else who apparently has enchantments on them and is like going through something. And it seems Fairfax and Letty have this plan in which they'll play into what Howl wants because he's like the most powerful wizard there is right now, basically. Because it'll be good for Letty to kind of be taken under his wing, like meet the people he knows, that kind of thing. So they're kind of, I don't want to say Howl's manipulating her. He kind of is to make her fall in love with him because that's all he cares about. So they're kind of manipulating each other at this point.
I think it's interesting that Mrs. Fairfax talks about him the way she does. And like Michael makes a comment too of like, oh, didn't it just make you laugh the way Mrs. Fairfax was just like talking like she knew him? I'm like, but like, does she not know what, like, I think everything she said was valid. Like he could provide potentially some magical education for Letty. Like I think the scheme was well founded.
Yeah, I think Michael just understands more like I actually think it's Michael that says Howl is like impossible to pin down.
Right.
Like even Michael as his apprentice cannot get him to answer a question. It takes like forever to get his assistance.
Yeah, maybe he's just laughing because like while they have the scheme, like Howl will always win one of these situations.
Yeah, and it'll only last until Howl gets bored, which will be when Letty falls in love.
Yeah, true.
It's like, yeah, it's not a good foundation. But I mean, fair play to them for trying to take advantage of a heartless man.
Right.
You could question, is he heartless?
Oh, I like how you're prompting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would maybe push back on the idea that he is heartless, but I think maybe it comes back to the curse thing, right? Because I do think this is like incentivizing this behavior. Like it maybe seems like collection behavior, right? Of like, okay, he's gonna get girls to fall in love with him, and then like once he's gotten to that point, there's nothing left. I'm just gonna move on to the next one. Another thing that kind of sits in this vein that paints Howl negatively is his showering behavior, right? Like Michael points out, like, he takes over an hour shower every day. He's like, you constantly see that he's going into the shower, like when he comes home, before he leaves, all this stuff. And they describe him as really vain. But I can't help but think that that's like, it's so regular and it's almost like a rule, like the hour a day or more. It feels like it comes from a curse, right? Like when you know there's a curse coming in the background, like something that's that structured, I'm like, okay, like maybe he's doing this because he has to, or because like, and when I say that he has to, either because it's a rule or because the curse just makes him do it, right? Like focus on his image. And there's like even the scene too where like, though this maybe is too much to get into right now, but there's the scene where his like hair starts to change color and it gets all slimy, and that's like a big problem, which I think is maybe connected to this too. That's obviously really hard for him, though, like valid, because it sounds really gross. Like all of this stuff just sounds like curse behavior, right? Like for him to get slimy, like covered up like that, that can't just be a choice. So I'm thinking behind the scenes, like this is why I think he maybe had poor behavior when the castle started, and maybe that was before the witch, because maybe she saw that and was like, okay, I'm gonna punish you with that behavior.
Okay.
I don't know necessarily what for, but like I just think whatever the beef is, like she's saying, okay, well, like, oh, you want to be this way, like, well, now, like, you're never going to actually find love, like you're just going to be stuck pursuing it, and the moment that you get it, you don't want it anymore. Like that's kind of the angle I think for the girls. I have it less concrete for the vanity, but I just see like the signs of structure in the vanity thing.
Okay, which would also be very fairy tale-esque.
Yeah, and I have some more thoughts with that with the poem later too.
Yeah, which we'll get into. And then there's also about vanity. I can't remember who says it. It might have also been Michael, but somebody notes like if there's ever a day Hal doesn't spend like 2 hours in the bath, he must have truly met like his true love.
Right. That did feel a bit foreshadowy.
It did to me as well, and I can't tell. I don't. I'm like, am I remembering something or am I making something up?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's like still a question of what the story is about in some ways. Especially for Howl. Like we've kind of talked about what Sophie's motivations and like character arc might be like. I'm still a little bit confused of what that's like for Howl, because if it is this kind of more love and romance angle, like it doesn't actually feel that set up for that. Like I could see that being the curse, but it doesn't actually feel like set up for like the solution to that being like Howl finding love. You know, like there's like an exceptional girl, you know, that doesn't stick out to me right now.
Oh, okay. And what have you thought about like Sophie and Howl in regards to their dynamic?
Yeah, because this would maybe be like the spot for it, right? Is like Sophie and Howl, but it doesn't necessarily seem like that's the role that they're serving for each other. If I'm gonna be honest here, like the kind of crazy thought maybe that I'm having is that there's more of a spark between Sophie and Calcifer than there is between Sophie and Howl. It was giving like maybe Beauty and the Beast vibes. This is where I start leaving it less, but like I was like, okay, maybe like Calcifer isn't really like a fire demon per se. Like maybe he's like a human who's been turned into a fire demon because of the contract he has with Howl. Like almost some other type of like magic type thing going on, right? Or just because it was like by the nature of them doing something wild to make the castle exist. But I was like, maybe there's some like behind the scenes, like Calcifer is really just a human, and like he and Sophie are gonna fall in love, and then it's gonna like he's gonna turn human again, and then they're gonna be happy forever. Like that was kind of the angle I was thinking, more so than the Sophie and Howl angle, which like maybe is possible. Like when maybe the Beauty and the Beast is in the other direction, though I think it's maybe mean to call her a beast, but like where she's gonna like transform back into herself and they fall in love. Like maybe it's just I'm not seeing that. Like to me, I want the story to be like a character growth thing more than a romance thing, and that just feels like more what it's set up to be right now.
That's so fascinating. I love that a lot.
Just gives me the vibe that I'm wrong, but I like the idea.
I have nothing I can add to it. But yeah, I understand. Like,
not that I'm not open to whatever, but I would need to see some more development into why, you know, why that would work, or like why she would be the exceptional girl in this case. I mean, at first I thought maybe Letty would successfully be that, but once they got into it more, it's like, okay, like that's probably not the case.
To be fair, yeah, Hal and Sophie's relationship it's really just banter. Like, I feel like it is very, they just dig into each other, and I guess there is romance in that.
Yeah, there can be.
There can be, yeah, but it is like, impossible to pin down Hal versus much too persistent Sophie. So, like,
Yeah.
I can understand the dynamic, but as always, it doesn't have to be romantic for me.
I think there is a potential for parallel between a Sophie Howl situation and Michael with Martha Letty.
Okay.
Because
oh, I see.
Martha makes a comment of, this is actually really good for me that I look like Letty, but I'm going to look like myself again in the future, because that'll be like kind of the true test of love. Like if I find someone who really wants me for me, they're not going to care when I like slowly start looking differently, because they're still going to love me, which like Michael's already kind of made clear that that's true. So, and I think that's potentially a foreshadowing of like, okay, if like something were to spark between Howl and Sophie, it would kind of have to be just like from like personness, given Howl's behavior of like typically seeking, I think, girls close to his age, at least if we're following that trend. Not that anything crazy couldn't happen, but I doubt it in this, seemingly kid story. So, it's maybe that's like the foreshadowing of, okay, like they're gonna like learn to like love each other, not even necessarily romantically, but they're gonna learn to love each other for like the person they are beyond their looks and beyond the like reputation maybe like that Hal has, if we're thinking looks too, and like they'll end up with the same kind of idea that Michael and Martha will have.
Okay. I didn't think about it, but it makes sense, especially with all of the vanity stuff we just talked about.
But I like Sophie and Calcifer more.
Fair. I suppose getting into the final part of this book, which we've kind of already like alluded to a million billion times, so we'll probably repeat ourselves. Yeah, it's very important. There are two major things that happen, I guess, that are tied together. Maybe more than two. Michael ends up working on this spell, and Sophie gets involved in it.
The spell,
quote unquote spell, which ends up just being a poem, and we will talk about the poem, of course.
Just being a poem.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it mentions in its first line, even part of the title, depending on how you want to title it, has that part about catching a falling star. So, of course, like anybody would, Sophie suggests that they go do it, and Michael almost does.
Yeah, in a world where one can actually do this. It seems the stars are sentient.
Yeah, sentient enough to, like, not want to be caught and to kill themselves.
Yeah, dude. It's like, what is happening here?
Yeah,
my sense was maybe that it was dying anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it even said that, but I'm like, maybe that's the reason why it did that.
A fair judgment. Yeah. I mean, they are falling out of the sky, so that's kind of, yeah, it would make sense. Yeah. So we know that can happen. And then Hal eventually gets asked about this spell. Turns out it's not a spell, it's his nephew's, like, poetry homework.
Which I was impressed at his ability to identify where it came from.
Yeah. And this is where we figure out where the black door leads to, because it just goes... It doesn't say this, but I'm assuming it just goes to Wales.
Right, because it shows up on his outfit.
Yeah, Welsh rugby. Yeah. And he speaks Welsh.
Yeah. Oh, did they specifically say that? Because I feel like they just described Welsh from a British or from an English person's perspective.
Oh, well, he said Cariad, which I might have butchered that pronunciation, but that's like a Welsh word.
It's a Welsh word. Okay, all right.
But yeah, it seems like this world is basically like ours. We get descriptions of like televisions and video games and like no magic and but yeah, some magic, which is a little strange.
Yeah, I was kind of confused about that. I guess let's get into it more and I'll ask more questions.
Yeah, so we end up tracing the homework back to the English teacher, and the issue is Hal's nephew ended up giving the spell to the teacher to kind of be like, I was trying to work on the homework, but it got kind of like magicked out of here, so forgive me.
Right.
So they have to go visit this English teacher, which is Miss Angorian, and she recognizes it as a spell.
Yeah. So like this is where I was like, okay, like does it even matter that they're in Wales? Because she knows what's up. And he tells her that he studied spells.
Mm-hmm.
Though he's like, oh, it was just like in an academic setting, which we know is not true. So I was like, is that in this world or is that in the other world? Is Miss Angorian aware of both worlds, or is there just also magic in this quote real world?
Yeah. And I will say, I'm just as confused as you are. I don't remember.
Because it was kind of a jarring transition, right? It's like, okay, they walk out of the nothing and they're like in suburbia, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's giving the vibe of our world. And then they are, the whales thing, and they show up to the house and the video games. It's like all this stuff to like effectively take you out of the fantasy world you were just in, or like maybe the setting of a fantasy world for what fantasy world people would see, like it's something that would like make you think the rules of the world might be different. But then it doesn't seem like maybe they are at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, like with the spell, like the spell / poem combo, even, I should say, knowing that they're gonna end this chapter being like, sounds like the witch is catching up to us, right? I'm like, how is the witch connected with what's going on with his nephew's teacher too, right? Like, just thinking of the hops of like, does she kind of have access to this world, or are they in the same world? Like, the witch is connected to this somehow too. One thing that definitely feels missing is like, why Miss Angorian would know what's up and what it would have to do with the witch, whether or not the witch is a known or an unknown entity to her.
I mean, it's possible enough that the witch knows. How do I want to say this? It's possible the witch could know of it if Hal was actually born in this place.
Mm.
Like, maybe just through knowing him, she's aware of this. Or like, I don't know if like the doors is like typical magic or if it's like Calcifer demon magic,
That's a good point too.
Like, how accessible is having a door that goes to multiple locations?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's like another one of the things that comes down to why did they make the castle to begin with, right? Like, did they make it so that Hal would just have access to all of these worlds? Well, I'm sure they did. I'm sure that was part of it. It seems like the two main features are that it moves and that he can go to all these places. So yeah, I'd be curious to know that too, of like if Calcifer has special powers there, and if that might have something to do with the witch's motivations as well.
Yeah. But it's not like the last time we're going to visit here, it seems like, because Hal seems interested in Miss Angorian. I feel sorry for her already. And she's basically just waiting for her missing fiance, whose name is Ben Sullivan. So I guess that's another person that's been missing, exiled, disappeared.
Catch it. His name is Ben Sullivan?
Sullivan, yep.
What's the wizard's name?
Solomon.
I think enough said there. I feel there's a connection.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, we end this section with that poem by John Donne, which Hal recognized as the poem Song, or Go and Catch a Falling Star. This is basically a poem of finding like an honest woman or a faithful woman, not an unfaithful woman, is like impossible. Like, you could live 10,000 days, see the greatest things in the world, and you will still not find a faithful woman. Harsh, to be fair. And it's clearly tied to the curse that the Witch of the Waste has put on Hal, because it's immediately after that Hal will be 10,000 during Midsummer Day, and the witch has caught up to them somehow, and all of these things are mentioned. So it's pretty clear there's like the connection. Why is there the connection? I don't know, John. Why?
Thanks for bouncing it to me. Great question. I think this. A couple things stick out as interesting here. One is just the fact that that this was even given in his nephew's English class as like a source, and that when he hears the second half or second verse, maybe just second verse, he gets pretty freaked out about it. Like, he seems kind of panicky, and I think that's like the 10,000 days is there. Like, I think that's a source for why he's panicking about it. I think this poem does connect to the things I was talking about earlier with my theory of like this idea of finding true love and it being just out of his reach. And if I think about the 10,000 days thing in particular as like an imminent thing he's going to experience, then maybe that does kind of push in the direction of he's going to find someone, or has found someone, maybe if we're thinking of Sophie, that's like going to break it for him. But I do have some trouble with the idea that the witch would use this poem as a source of a specific curse. And particularly that, like, the witch should be like, oh yes, the way to break your curse is true love's kiss. Like, I just feel like there'd be something more complicated than that. So at least I'd like to think so. So that's the part that I'm struggling with on why this is connected to the curse.
Mm-hmm. I think, like, something important to note about magic here is it gets mentioned early by, I can't remember, Hal or Michael, that spells always include a mistake.
Yeah. At least the advanced ones, yeah.
I'm thinking that means, like, there's always a way to get out of a spell.
Oh.
So that, like, nothing will last forever.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's how I'm interpreting it. I don't know if that's exactly what it means.
I kind of just thought it was like you need to pay attention to the spell because something will be in there that's not quite right, and it's like your job as an advanced wizard to like pay enough attention to not make that mistake.
Oh, I see.
Whether it's like for gatekeeping reasons or just for like safety, even to be like, you need to be good enough at your craft to do this right.
I could believe it for safety, because like spells are described as like puzzles sometimes. Like, you have to figure them out to do them, and, like, do them in specific ways, and blah, 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 blah. They're very complicated, apparently. Some of them, at least. So, I could understand that for a safety thing. I'm not saying it's tied to whatever curse is going on, but, like, I guess if you interpret it as, like, there's always a loophole out of something, then there has to be a way to break a contract, break a curse, break a spell, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah. Some things that are funny about this too, like 10,000 days, I like did the conversion is only 27 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like either the implication is that Howl's is like about to be 27 in whatever days, or like 10,000 days has otherwise passed, if we're to take it literally and think about how timeline might be a complicating factor there. I'm looking at the poem now, and like there's a reference to snow white hairs, like as though one is turning old, which is interesting because of Sophie. But like, I don't know if I'm supposed to assume that this is about her or about Howl, but I would think it's supposed to be about Howl. But then it's interesting to see that the white hairs are mentioned in there. Of like, you would assume that that would be Howl's white hairs, but what if it's Sophie's white hairs? You know.
Oh, like the entire poem could be like gender flipped?
Yeah, or just like even just being more intentionally about both Howl and Sophie.
Yeah, to be fair, I also thought about the white hair bit for Sophie.
Mm-hmm. Or just to say that maybe she's the solution if it's about him, you know?
Yeah. It's, there's like nothing nefarious about the poem though, to be fair.
Yeah, in a way, I'm like trying to read it like it is the literal curse, but like that's also really not what they say. I guess they don't really say why he's so interested in it. We just kind of have to assume it's curse related.
Yeah.
And like, there's nothing here. The other thing I'll bring up too is I've talked about Calcifer's thing a little bit a couple times. Like, I was kind of hoping to see something here that would maybe think, okay, maybe if it's not Howl, maybe it's Calcifer, maybe it's Calcifer and Howl. Like, there's a lot of things it could be beyond Howl and Sophie. Or like if we start thinking, about combinations of people, or just like who it really is, what it's really about, because there's just kind of a couple of unknowns. It could be about why Howl is, stuck falling in love with girls until they fall in love with him, or like why they made the castle, or why, how Sophie's gonna get out of her thing, like what the contract is between Howl and Calcifer. Yeah, there's just like a lot that it could actually be in reference to, and I don't want to get too caught up in this is specifically Howl's curse if there's something else it's also supposed to be referring to.
And it is also odd how the poem got there, right? Like, it's believed it slipped through when Sophie opened the black door the first time because she's nosy, as always. But it's like, was it coincidence that it fell through, or did something bring it in? Like, it could just simply tie back to that idea of fate we kind of deal with in the first bit, which, I mean, you hate fate, but what can you do? And it's also after all of this, before the homework gets returned, that Calcifer mentions that Sophie has gotten a hint. To be fair, she's gotten a few hints. But...
Yeah, and I've probably missed all of them in reality, but with that chapter, at least it gave you the warning, so I was like, okay, let me look out for it, I think, like, the most likely thing in my head was what we were talking about before of the star falling. Because he's like, you caught your one yourself, didn't you? And he's kind of like, like, don't talk about it, that was the vibe. He just kind of moved on, but the vibe was don't talk about it. And so, yeah, like, and of course that gets mentioned in the first line of this poem. So, and that's what they try to do. That's how we end up here. So it makes you think, okay, Howl has done this and it caused him a problem. Because he's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't think you guys should do it. It would be really bad if you did. So, like, did catching this star get him the curse? And, like, what did that have to do with the Witch of the Waste? Like, does the Witch of the Waste have some investment in these falling stars? Like, I'm just trying to figure out why that would be. And then also if this is a hint for Calcifer's thing, like, is something about catching a falling star going to save Calcifer? I don't know. It's very confusing.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
That's like all I have there. Well, it's not all I have there. The other thing I'll say of other things that could have been a hint in that chapter, where I was like, if I'm really digging deep, early on in the chapter, he says, like, Hal comes in and, like, he's all like uptight because no one says hi to him, and Calcifer's like, I never do say hello, and it gave me the same vibe as the vanity thing, where I was like, that sounds like a rule.
Oh,
so that was something I was like, maybe that's a hit. I don't know if it'll actually amount to anything. I feel more strongly about the star, but I was like, okay, anything that sounds like a rule, or like whether de facto rule, or one that they have to follow in order to not make bad things happen, like anything like that sticks out to me right now.
I see.
And then I guess the other thing too is, like, we're getting to the point now where, like, Howl's going to have to do something about the missing people, and potentially meaning that he's going to have to address the Witch of the Waste. Seems like an obvious thing that getting rid of the Witch of the Waste would have some effect on the curses involved, but there's no, like, that doesn't feel like a hint as much, because there's no, like, certain phrase. It's just like that topic of conversation they happen to be talking about, which, like, maybe Calcifer could have called that, and that's why he said there would be a hint, but it's like, that's possibly it. I don't think so. It's not as the top of my list.
Yeah, I mean, Hal, of course, is still going to try to not confront the Witch of the Waste, I think. Like, doing it is a possibility to him, but it seems unlikely. So, yeah, the question really is, like, what happens when they do end up confronting each other? Like, is the Witch of the Waste so much more powerful than him? Or does it have something to do with the curse? Or whatever?
I mean, I really think Sophie's going to have a big part of whatever confrontation might happen with the Witch of the Waste, despite not necessarily being a witch herself. One thing we haven't really talked about is, like, the jars in the house, and, like, how that affects Hal somewhat negatively, and also Sophie's curiosity in them. Like, there's not really a lot of concrete on what could be happening there, though maybe that's, like, part of the reason why he turned green and slimy. But, like, other than that, like, it almost makes me wonder, like, is there something here, like, as far as Sophie having potential for magic, especially getting involved with the spell with Michael, or learning something along the way, or if it's not magic, just, like, something to do with those jars. Like, there's some, like, maybe power source here that we have yet to tap into that's going to allow Sophie to also stand her ground against the witch.
Okay. This is such a weird episode. I have nothing to say to that.
Someone theorized on all the things that you may or may not know about already.
Yeah. But yes, I'm glad you brought up Sophie, what she's capable of doing. Obviously, like, we've seen her become more confident in herself, but there is, like, a gap, right, between what she could possibly do against a wizard or a witch. So that'll be interesting, I guess. I can't think of any other leading questions I could ask you. And I think we covered to the best of our ability what we think is going to happen. It's confusing.
It is confusing. I tried to be thorough, and I maybe even word vomited a little bit there, but, like, I was trying to address, like, there are kind of, this isn't a long book, but there's kind of a lot of stuff happening, particularly on the, like, personal social level too, right? Like, all these things we've talked about, like relationships and personal growth, and why, what is personal and what's magic almost is a question in this book too. So there's a lot of interesting layers happening here.
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, if you have your own thoughts and theories, all of our socials are in the description, and then also there's, like, reviews and comments and everything. So next time we'll just finish the second half of this book, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.